There we go.
There it is.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm Sarah Connor. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the Community Affairs Assistant at Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. I'm based in Rochester. I'm joined by Deborah McDowell Hernandez, who is our Senior Director of Public and Community Affairs. And I'm also joined by our two very special guests, Dr. Rafael Outland and Courtney Konechny. So thank you all for being with us tonight. Hello, Hillary. Like kind of trying to look at the chat too and keep an eye on things. And we're going to try to do questions at the end. So just FYI, while we get started, if you have questions throughout the program, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll try to keep an eye on that. But if you've been to one of our Take Action nights before, you know that this one is different than what we usually do. Usually we are talking about an issue related to Planned Parenthood's mission, and we're taking action in some way. So usually that's writing a letter to the editor or contacting our elected officials, something like that. You know, talking about comprehensive sex ed and abortion access and all that important stuff. But Deborah and I, when we were thinking about Take Action Night for this month, we were like, I don't think we could handle it, and I don't think we felt like anybody else could handle it. We just needed a break. We needed to take a beat all together. So we decided to use this space tonight to just take a breath and talk about something else that is very important, which is self-care and wellness, especially this year during 2020, which from the get-go was just a whirlwind. In March, we had COVID start, and it's lasted all year long, and now we're in another surge. And turned everybody's lives upside down in one way or another. And we know that Black communities in particular were hit very hard by COVID and continue to be. And then in the midst of COVID, in the beginning of the summer, we all witnessed the murders of innocent Black people at the hands of the police, which triggered this whole movement of protests and an anti-racist movement across the country, including right in Rochester, because we, you know, it hit very close to home when we learned of the murder of Daniel Prude. We had, you know, weeks and weeks of protests here, which of course were led by Black activists and organizers who were at the forefront across the country, despite the pain and trauma that accompanied those murders. And then before anybody could catch their breath, the election was here and we entered election season. So that was just piling on. And once again, it was, you know, largely Black voters and organizers across the country, Black women in particular, who showed up and delivered. So it's been a hard freaking year. It's been very hard and traumatic in a lot of ways for people. And we're nearing the end of it. And, you know, last week we finally, was it last week when we learned the election results? What is time? It's not real anymore. But I think we all, after days of wondering and horrible anxiety, we all kind of took a huge sigh of relief together. And that felt good for a minute, but it still feels good. But it doesn't mean that everything is magically solved. One thing that I have heard a lot this year is, oh my gosh, 2020. I can't wait for 2020 to be over. I just want it to be over and it'd be 2021. And yes, but things aren't going to magically get better on January 1st. So we have to be in this for the long haul together, especially because we're still in a pandemic. I think we all were hit last week with the realization or the continued grappling with the reality that much of this country is still dealing with a lot of racism and classism and homophobia and transphobia and xenophobia, etc. So we have a lot to still to work on. So that's what tonight is all about, is taking care of ourselves and prioritizing our mental health and our wellness in general so that we don't burn out. Because if we want to create a sustainable movement, to create long-lasting change together, we have to take care of ourselves, or we'll all burn out and be miserable. So that's what it's all about. So first, we're going to hear from Dr. Outland, who's going to speak on the importance of Black wellness in response to everything that's happened in 2020. And then we will hear from Courtney, who is going to talk to us about energy wellness and lead us in a heart coherence session, which I'm very excited for. And hopefully, yes, we'll have some time for questions at the end, and you can feel free to enter those in the chat, and we'll try to get to those, keep track of them. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Rafael Outland. Dr. Outland is an assistant professor in the Department of Counselor Education at the College of Brockport, now SUNY Brockport, I believe. They changed their name, right? I believe so.
Yeah, it's the College of Brockport, SUNY. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to Brockport, so whoop, whoop. Dr. Outland holds a doctorate in counselor education and supervision from the U of R. His research focuses on the influence of violence on the lived experiences of marginalized populations, primarily poor Black and Brown youth. His most recent work investigated the impact of police killings on the family and community of youth victims in the Northeast, Midwest, and West Coast US. Dr. Outland has remained a vital support and advocate for Rochester's urban youth through collaboration with local organizations, including Goodfellas, Teen Empowerment, and the Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence. He is a native of College Park, Georgia, and has lived in Rochester for the past 10 years. So Dr. Outland, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction. And just want to start out by thanking Planned Parenthood as an organization, Deborah, Sarah, you guys for the invitation to be part of this talk. And you too, Courtney, just for that opportunity to share space. Yeah, so thank you all for having me here. I think the best way to get started with this talk is to really ground ourselves in what I would understand as the roots of anti-Blackness, as well as Black liberation in this country. And so when we think about anti-Blackness in the US, I always try to start from a place of it being grounded, and it started with what can be called parasitic capitalism, as well as imperialist violence. And so parasitic capitalism, the ongoing exploitation, plunder of resources, all at the expense of white ruling elite and folks who support that type of oppression of Black bodies. Some examples, as many of you guys know, I think it all kind of started in this space with the genocide of the natives and the stealing of their sacred land. And then, of course, with the struggles of European colonizers to maintain this place. That's when I think the African or the Black heritage came into existence. And so, yeah, it continued from our capturing in our homeland, Africa, and brought here as prisoners. And I always like to say prisoners because, at least from my understanding of the African Black legacy, we've sort of remained under sort of a vice of continued attack, systemic attack, repression as a people and as a group. And of course, this repression continued to the Jim Crow era. Many of you guys know as slavery by another name, forced labor, for absolutely no profit gain. And now I think we kind of fast forward to the rise of police terrorism and the prison industrial complex in this place. And so as we see, uh, this isn't anything new for Black bodies or Black people in this country. And if we can kind of see what's happening in our current day, which I'll speak a little bit about in a second, is that most of this kind of attack has been ongoing and connected. All right, so alongside a lot of that imperialist and parasitic violence that Black bodies have experienced, and this is where I think I began to really embrace and have a strong, I would say, holding of Black pride and what it means to be Black. There's always been a Black liberation and freedom struggle for the human rights, the independence, and just the liberties of being here for Black people in this country, right? And so we think about Black liberation, we have to understand freedom from a sense of being free from systems of oppression. So it's not freedom to live like white people or freedom to live like rich people, but it's a kind of freedom where I don't have to worry about experiencing police terrorism when I walk out of my door. I can feel supported by the systems around me because I'm trying. I'm trying to contribute to society. And so it's really about being free from these different systems of oppression. And so some of our longstanding history of liberation and freedom fighting, it started from the time we were captured. At that point when those who were stolen decided to rise up and slay those who were the colonizers who were controlling those ships and take it over with the hopes of going back to our motherland. We can also think about what happened during chattel slavery, where many slave revolts, rebellions, those led by Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, were again about trying to gain and capture the freedom and liberation of Black people. And then we move on to our sort of current day time, Black Panther Party, the Black Power movement, civil rights movement, all the way up to our current context of the movement for Black lives, as well as Free the People Rochester. And again, I'm just trying to set the stage for us to understand what has freedom fighting really been about for Black people. And if we can make that connection, as long as Black people have felt oppressed and held down in this place, at least the ancestors I've studied and become aware of has always put up a continued struggle against it. So now we kind of fast forward to what's happening in 2020. And Sarah, I think you really summed it up nicely. It's just sort of been one of those chaotic and what I would like to call sort of a boiling point for oppression of Black bodies in this space. And I think, as you mentioned, it started from the COVID-19. And I think with that, really recognize that I think it really showed not only this country, but the world, the systemic violence and racism that Black people are confined to. And some of the examples, the rampant homelessness, rampant unemployment, and then I think more importantly, the mass deaths of Black and brown bodies that many, at least if we studied the science behind COVID, could have been prevented. So I think it's important that we understand it, just sort of shed a light on a lot of the systemic racism and violence endured by Black people. Another thing that we saw first forehand this year is, and of course, many Black folk, if we've been paying attention, we know this wasn't anything new, but we saw police terrorism, right, placed front and center for the nation as well as the entire world to see via the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And then in our own backyard, the murder by Rochester police by Daniel Prude. And so if we think about these things, constant struggles by Free the People Rochester movement of for Black lives being held against it. As you mentioned, Sarah, by the time all of us sort of reached this election, I think everybody was sort of feeling this sense of being burnt out and tired, and, you know, where do we go from here? What kind of fronts do we continue to put up just to ensure that people continue to listen? And as you mentioned, Black Lives Matter organize other Black folk to get out and vote. Brown people, Latinx people, I think, at least from the research I've studied, were some of the highest folks who went out in the numbers and voted. And so one thing I want to say about elections and politics in this country, although Black and brown people did go out and cast their ballots, we still kind of remain on the fence about whether or not these elections are going to be about creating freedom and the justice we need as Black people. And so, in other words, even if we bring in Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, they hold these positions. My recommendation to not only Black people, but all of us, we got to ensure that we hold these people accountable. We have to make sure that we hold them accountable because we brought them in. And so now I want to just kind of shift gears and talk a little bit about self-care and wellness, because I think if we see the history, we see that this is an ongoing and continuous struggle. What I've been learning, I guess, over the last 5-10 years is the importance of how to maintain and rejuvenate. And so when we think about what is self-care and wellness, it's about knowing your practices to rejuvenate and maintain your body, your mind, your soul. Some might call that emotions, etc. But it's really about knowing how to maintain and rejuvenate. When you ask the question, even as activists, why is self-care important for me? And I think Sarah she identified first and foremost, it's going to keep you empowered. It's going to keep you inspired, right? And it's going to keep you motivated to do the work. But then I think that second element of it, it will prevent you from burnout. So it will prevent you from going and going and going with no rest, no sleep, no eating. And then you finally burn out. And then at that point, I don't know if you are any good for the movement and any good for yourself in this kind of struggle. And so just a few points and kind of wrapping up. I kind of devised 5 points for myself. This is my self-care plan. Other people, I think, who are part of the community and the kind of struggle we stay glued to. But it's really 5 straightforward steps, and I encourage you all to try to embrace them and implement them in the best fashion you see fit, because it's really all about your self-maintenance. So that first step is to really just have a concrete plan, all right? And I think that plan, as Black people, it has to start with having a foundation about Black pride. So really knowing that Black is beautiful, we can love ourselves and care about ourselves despite the struggle. And one thing for sure, we can celebrate and really enjoy being Black. And that doesn't have anything to do with anti-whiteness for people who at times who try to put those in the same boat. No, Black is beautiful because we had a right to embrace it, just like anybody else had a right to do that. The second part of that concrete plan is just being able to map out step by step, practice by practice, exactly what you need to rejuvenate. All right, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my practices briefly in a second. So with step 2, it's important that you embrace the self-care and wellness plan on multiple levels, all right? So the individual level can consist of exercising, all right? Having your regimen of exercising, whatever it is that you need to do. Eating healthy. And eating healthy, folks, that fast food is called fast food because it's not only cheap and it has less minerals, but it goes through you really fast. So in other words, that kind of food isn't replenishing and fueling your body. So it's important to stay away from that and try to double down on the vegetables, fruit, etc. Anything that grows from the earth, at least my practice. That second part is about family. And when I say family, it's more about taking care of the people around you. We all come from different spaces and we call family different things, but it's about trying to love the people around you, respect those people, and trying to get them a sense of power. Because remember, when we look at that history, that's been one of the primary things, trying to take our power, trying to take our love for who we are. So I think that family dynamic is really about trying to give people back their power through inspiration and trying to love and respect them. And that final element is through the community. And as you guys know, activists, when you're in these spaces, and again, I just appreciate being here. Community is really about trying to remain your brothers and sisters keepers. So in other words, activists, if we have no one else to turn to, we can at least know we can turn to each other, right? We at least know we can turn to each other. All right. So really maintaining that sense of no, if I got it, you got it, and making sure we reciprocate that love. The third step is establishing a village. That's what I call it, a village, just from more of an African proverb. And this village starts with knowing yourself through self-awareness, all right, knowing your strengths, areas for growth. But then also, and this one isn't talked about as often, knowing your enemy, all right? So remaining aware of the people who want to see you do bad, who want to put you down, and kind of really deciphering, okay, these people belong over here, and everybody who wants to see me do well and empower me belong on the other side. The second part of establishing that village is knowing who to contact for support. Um, Oftentimes with activism, say for example, our family members, they might not share that same agenda for activism that we share. However, they know us from since we were children, so they can provide us a certain kind of love, right? That some of our activist brothers and sisters may not be able to provide. And also knowing circles where you can have this kind of discourse openly, lovingly, and welcomely, versus other ones where there might be pushback and adverse response to just raising certain topics. So really knowing where do you go for support. Um, the fourth step is really beginning to collaborate with allies. One thing I want to remind all of us, and some of my elders had to remind me, is that you don't have to do this work alone. There's a lot of people out there committed to the struggle, committed to the work, maybe not in Rochester, but surrounding areas. So really understanding that you don't have to do it alone. So really finding out who are your allies and how can you share that load of the work and the commitment. And finally, step 5 is to just simply love yourself, respect yourself, activists, and continue to put yourself to work. All right. And what I mean by that love is do your best to try to celebrate those small victories. All right. If we're willing to struggle, we're willing to win. And then also constantly staying prepared for the next battle. And be compassionate with yourselves and your allies. Remember that we make mistakes because we're still humans. We're not robots as activists and people in the struggle. And so we got to stay compassionate with our own mistakes as well as the people around us. And then finally, continue to use your strengths. All right, your strengths and skills, all right, that you have naturally or that you have developed to continue to fight back. And as I want to conclude, I want to remind all of us that I don't believe that healing can happen without justice. And that's I think a feeling for me why I remain part of the struggle. And I continue to salute all of my activists, brothers, sisters, trans folks, LGBT folk, everybody who's a part of this struggle. I continue to salute you because I'm a firm believer that we need justice before we can ever begin to truly heal. So I want to thank all of you for this time and space. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I was trying to find my unmute button. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn it over to Deborah to introduce Courtney.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you again, Dr. Outland. What I hope from this event is that we can continue this relationship, Planned Parenthood, with you as well as with Courtney Connect Me. So thank you for sharing.
I would
And
love
now
to.
I'm going
Thank you,
to,
Doctor.
thank you. So now I'll introduce Courtney for her presentation. Courtney Connect Me is a board certified New York State licensed creative arts therapist with 16 years of experience working in community, clinical, and educational settings, serving traumatized children, at-risk youth, women, and veterans suffering from PTSD. She has been in private practice offering art therapy, energy medicine, meditation, and wellness since 2006. Courtney is the owner and practitioner at Zingara Holistic Wellness, Zingara Energy Medicine. In 2015, she co-founded the Hearing Silence Mindfulness in Schools program, teaching youth ages 5 to 18 and teachers mindfulness, yoga, brain science, self-awareness, empathy, and compassion. In 2019, Courtney co-founded Elevate Community Foundation, a nonprofit whose mission is to bridge accessibility to low, no-cost alternative therapies and wellness practices for people and communities living in poverty. Courtney began practicing energy healing, meditation, and yoga over 22 years ago while coping with the effects of chronic illness and complex trauma. This ultimately provided her to a path to self-awareness, wellness, and an innate call to help others find that same healing. Courtney currently teaches yoga, meditation, creative wellness, and energy health and healing in the Rochester community. And Courtney, welcome to Take Action Night, and thanks so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for that. And thank you, Sarah. And just thank you so much for having me and inviting me tonight. It's an honor. And Dr. Outland, thank you so much for your talk. That was very powerful. And a lot of what you were saying really resonated in terms of the energetics of everything that's happening. 2020 has been quite a year, a traumatizing year. And the Black community has definitely seen the brunt of that, the most of that. And I think you are, Dr. Outland, you're right that when COVID hit, it was almost as though we all kind of looked up and saw what's been happening all this time, because we are all stuck in these systems of oppression that kind of keep us on this wheel. So in our response to looking up was outrage and trauma for all of us. And so how the body reacts to trauma is to stay in constant survival mode. And when you're in constant survival mode, you are constantly releasing stress hormones in your body. You're constantly releasing cortisol. You're basically setting the stage when you're in constant survival mode, which, mind you, this is what a lot of the Black community has been dealing with forever. When you're in constant survival mode, you're setting the stage for diseases, for mental health issues, for addiction, for all of those things. You're kind of paving the way for it. So that's what we've all been experiencing this year. So I am very honored to be here to talk about self-care, because it is crucial right now, if we're going to keep going. And 2020 is going to end, but we got a long way to go. Long way to go. So when I was thinking about what to focus on tonight, I thought heart coherence was a really important thing to focus on. Part of being stuck in all of these systems is losing our humanness and losing our connection to what it means to be a compassionate person and what it means to love and be okay with, expressing that, and what it means to empathize with other people, and what it means to have gratitude for what you actually do have. We've lost that because of these systems. And so heart coherence is about, it's about realigning everything so that we can really experience those things again. And we've been taught in these systems that we have to go out and find all of the things that we need, and that they exist somewhere outside of us, but they really don't. Everything we need exists inside of us. We have all of the tools. So what I'm hoping to offer you tonight is just a little explanation about that. And then I'm going to guide you through a whole meditation, but it can also be broken up into pieces. So for just to stay trauma informed within this group, because it feels safer when people know what's going to happen versus what the heck is she going to do. I'm just going to kind of take you through what to expect going forward. So I'm going to just invite you to, not this minute, I'm just going to explain it right now. I'll invite you to close your eyes and get comfortable and all of those things for a practice. And then I'll guide you through breath work. And the really, really important thing about the breath work is when you slow your breath down, you're doing several things. You're telling your body that you're safe, that it's safe enough to not be stressed, panicked, in survival mode. It's safe enough to be calm. You're sending messages to your amygdala, and which is telling you to just kind of, okay, you're not in fight or flight anymore. Slow breath is the best possible thing. If you take nothing else from tonight, slow breathing will calm you every single time. So I'll take you through that, and something called heart breath. And then we're going to move into how to use our thoughts and emotion together to create elevated emotions, and to use that for ourselves, but also to send out and use it for our environment, for people around us. The heart is fascinating. It has its own neural network. So the brain has all of these neurons in its neural network, and it's functioning and telling the whole body what to do. And the heart actually has its own. So the heart makes a lot of its own decisions the same way the brain does, and they also communicate with one another. So being in all of these systems and having, our attention divided and being stressed all the time, it really has made it difficult for us to experience something called heart-brain coherence, which means that our heart and our brain are working together in order to bring all of our systems into equilibrium. So we kind of have to learn how to do that, and unlearn a lot of the other things. So I will take you through all of that. And so we're going to move into it. So I think I'm going to have you, if you would like to turn off your camera, if that makes you feel more comfortable, that's fine. If you have some kind of practice, I just invite you to just get into that posture. If you do not have some kind of practice, you can just be sitting in a chair. The most important thing is to just have your feet flat on the floor. I will also invite you to close your eyes. However, if that does not feel comfortable for you, that's totally okay. You can just kind of find something to look at. Just try to avoid looking around. Just one thing, or keeping your eyes closed. So as you just start to move into a different space now, a more quiet space for yourself, just notice for a moment how your body is feeling. Notice if you have pain or tension anywhere. We're not changing anything. We're not judging anything. We're just noticing. Noticing what is truth for you right now in this present moment. And noticing your mind. Oftentimes when we get quiet, that's when our mind becomes the loudest, which is completely normal. So just notice the thoughts that are going through your mind. No judgment. Honor them. And then take a deep breath and just try to let them pass. And then I'm just going to ask you to bring your awareness to your breathing. Again, not changing anything yet, just noticing and honoring your breath. Whatever it feels like, the sensations that you notice in your body. And as you focus on it, notice if your breath feels shallow. Notice where your breath stops. So maybe when you inhale, is your breath stopping right at your chest? Or notice if you're taking the breath all the way in. And if you notice that you are just kind of chest breathing and the breathing in your breath is shallow, in your next couple breaths, just try to practice bringing the breath all the way down, filling up your lungs and bringing it all the way down into your abdomen. And then bringing it back up again, which might feel a little bit awkward because we are so used to rushing and moving around and taking shallow breaths that when we actually breathe the way we're meant to breathe, it feels a little strange. So just take a couple more of those, getting used to how it feels in your body. And if your thoughts distract you, which they always do, it's okay. Just notice them and let them pass. And what you're going to be doing is just switching back to an anchor. So when something distracts you, you're either going to be going back to your breath or the feeling that I'm guiding you through. As soon as you notice, just bring it back. So we're going to start slowing our breathing down, which I mentioned earlier is the body's sign that things are safe and that it's okay to be calm. It's okay to allow everything to relax, your mind, your body, your awareness of everything around you. Taking slow breaths in, so maybe counting to 5 as you inhale. And then the most important piece is keeping your exhales just as long as your inhales. So counting to 5 for yourself on the inhale, and then counting to 5 for yourself on the exhale. So take yourself through a couple of those slow breaths. And as you're breathing, remember that you are bringing the breath all the way down and all the way back up again. And if counting to 5 feels like you can manage that with ease, maybe counting to 6. So stretching it out a little bit more. And actually, I'm going to count to 6 for 2 breaths for you. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you just go at your own pace. You go to 4 or 5, whatever feels okay. If it does feel comfortable, just follow along with me. So you're going to exhale fully first. And then inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So keep that breath as slow as you can for now. And just notice again your body. So we did that at the beginning before we started. So just take a minute with your slow breath and notice again how your body's feeling. Notice your mind, if there's any changes. Just noticing, keeping the breath very slow. And if you notice any pain or tension anywhere this time, you're going to take a deep breath in, and when you exhale, you're going to breathe into that space. And as you breathe into that space, just trying to release and relax. So next I'm going to have you bring your awareness to your heart center. It's that space right in the center of your chest. And you can even bring a hand up to your heart. You can use 2 fingers to touch the space. You can use your whole hand. Sometimes it's just easier to notice the sensation of a space when there's actual touch involved. So first, just noticing any sensation that you feel in your heart center. What does your heart feel like right now? Does it feel open? Does it feel constricted, tight? Does it feel heavy? Just noticing. And honoring whatever space that you are in right now. And then we're going to start something called heart breath. So we're going to continue that deep breathing, but we're going to do it right in our heart center. So starting in that place where your hand or your fingers are actually making contact with your heart center, that's where your breath is, where your inhale is going to begin. So you're going to inhale and bring that breath all the way through your heart towards your back. And as you exhale, you're going to exhale it back out again through your heart. So taking the breath in, bringing it through the heart, and exhaling it back out again through the heart. We're going to do 3 more of those. And as you inhale, think of what you would like to take in. So it might be as simple as peace. It might be as simple as love. So taking in peace or love as you inhale and bring that all the way through your heart to your back. And as you exhale, releasing all of the things right now that aren't serving you in this moment. And just taking a couple more of those. So you can keep your hand on your heart center, or you can go ahead and put your hand down, whatever feels more comfortable. And I'm going to have you think about something in your mind that brings you some kind of positive feeling. So this could be a person you love very much and brings you joy. And as I say that out loud, you might think of the person immediately. Or this could be a place that makes you feel safe. This could be a pet. This could be a memory that you have. That's a wonderful memory. Just choose one thing that just creates wonderful, positive, elated emotion. So as you are choosing your one thing and you're settling on that, keep that in your mind and really really describe it in your mind visually. So what is the image of it? What does that place or person look like? Almost like you're creating a snapshot, like an imprint on your mind. You can think about the details of it, the why of it. And then we're going to experience the feeling of it. So if you've brought a person to mind who brings you joy and love, you're going to begin experiencing that joy and love and allowing yourself to begin feeling that image that you have in your mind. You're going to begin feeling in your heart center. So at this point, if it makes it easier to bring your hand back up to your heart center, you can go ahead and do that. Just allowing yourself to stay with the feeling, noticing what kinds of sensations happen as you stay with the feeling. Allowing yourself to embrace love or to embrace peace or compassion or care, whatever the emotion is that your memory or person or place has created for you. Embracing the emotion and holding it there. So we're going to sustain it. So at this point, instead of your breath being the anchor, your heart center, the emotion you're feeling is going to be the anchor. So if you get distracted at this point, as soon as you notice, as soon as you hear my voice, you're going to bring it back to that emotion that you're feeling. Just allowing yourself to just bathe in it. We don't let ourselves experience those emotions enough. Staying with it, allowing all of those wonderful hormones, feel-good hormones that get released in our bodies when we experience elevated emotion. There's biochemical things happening for you right now, right this moment. So staying with that feeling. And then we're going to start sending that feeling outward. So the electromagnetic field of our heart really extends out from our bodies several feet. So what the emotion we are carrying and holding, we truly do impact the world around us. So if we're not in a great place, that impacts everyone around us. If we can hold and sustain these wonderful elevated emotions, that too will impact everyone around us. So holding the emotion, staying with it, we're going to start sending it outward. So you can use your breath to do this on the exhale, extending it out in front of you. Also extending it out in back of you, allowing it to go in both directions. And with each exhale, still experiencing that emotion and staying with it, pushing that out into your environment. And maybe that makes you picture how it affects other people around you. Or maybe that makes you picture how it affects the energy around you. Maybe that will come in colors Or maybe you might experience other feelings with it. Just stay with it and continue the breath. Stay in the emotion. So as we're doing that, we're going to shift the emotion from wherever you are. We're going to shift that to gratitude. So allowing yourself to experience the feeling of gratitude. What does that feel like to you in your heart center? And think of one thing right here and now in this moment that you really feel gratitude for. And then start to send that out again with your breath. So we're going to kind of allow our breath to come back in and just stay in our heart center for a moment. And I'm going to have you go back to visualizing that person or place or thing that created that initial elevated emotion for you. So get the image of that in your mind. And then I'm going to have you visualize some kind of symbol for it. So if it feels better to just keep it a person's face, for example, that's okay. If maybe it reminds you of a flower or a heart or whatever, anything that comes to mind that could be some kind of symbol for the person, place, or thing and the emotion connected to it. So once you have that symbol in your mind, and you can see that image of it, we're going to go back into our heart. And we're going to take that image or that symbol, and we're going to hold that in our heart space. So we're feeling the emotion in the heart, but we're also seeing the image or the symbol in our heart. And with your breath, as you inhale, you're going to allow that symbol to start to light up. So you are imprinting your heart right now with that symbol that represents this elevated emotion for you. So you're going to take 5 breaths. And with every breath, you're going to illuminate that even more, imprinting it on your heart even more, while still staying in the feeling. And I'm going to have you take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, just let that go. And just start to come back to your body, to the space around you. Knowing that going forward, whenever you close your eyes and you bring that symbol or that image to your mind, you can then instantly feel that elevated emotion and change everything that's happening in your body and mind and energy. So I'm going to have everybody take 3 more rounds of breath. And whenever you close out your last breath, you can begin to open your eyes. So once I start to see a few more boxes coming live again, I'll know everybody's ready. Something important to just remember about this real quick, and then I'll hand it back over to Sarah and Deborah, is that what's really, really important about this, we are in a constant state of stress. And we've gone through just a ridiculous amount of trauma, and that has really impacted our bodies. So we have the power inside of us, in our mind, in our heart, to create something different. We don't need to go out there and find it. It's literally right here. You have all the things, all the memories, and you can literally change how your body is reacting biochemically by your thoughts, by thinking, and by creating that coherence with your heart. So I'm sure everybody here has heard many times, be careful what you think, and your body's listening, and thoughts are very important, and they absolutely are. But the emotion is really the key. It's the key to changing and shifting all of it. So allowing yourself to settle in those elevated emotions that we really should be experiencing all the time as human beings, compassion, love, peace, allowing yourself to settle in those emotions, that's what's going to create lasting change. So you could be in the supermarket. You don't have to go through a big, long 20-minute meditation. You could just take a deep breath, think of your symbol, and hold it in your heart, and that feeling is going to happen. So instead of standing there in the supermarket with somebody stressing you out, you're creating an elevated emotion right now, and your body is experiencing that. Nobody knows it. You're doing it, and that's how you're taking care of yourself in that moment. I used a really, really benign example like the supermarket. We have much bigger examples that we could use that for. So there's a lot of little pieces that you can use from that meditation quickly, on the go, quickly, just to shift how you're feeling in your body, in your heart. So that's it. So thank you very much for letting me share this with you today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was so relaxing. My cat jumped on my lap during my heart coherence session because she just could sense how relaxed I was, I guess. So I let her stay with me and finish the session with me. I think we both really enjoyed it. So that was very nice. And I think you can, as you just said, you can take, a little piece of that and carry it with you for, not 20 minutes, but for other situations when you're feeling that elevated kind of stressful reaction. I really loved what you said about how we've all kind of been in that survival mode, really for much of this whole year. And something as simple as slowing down your breath can literally make your body feel safe. So I think that was just, for me, a really great tool to carry with me, and I hope other folks found that useful. I hope that everybody took something from our night together that you can tuck into your pocket and make it part of your ongoing self-care maintenance, your wellness routine. So thank you both so much. Deborah, did you want to add something?
No, I will just say I feel like I've had like 20 pounds or 40 pounds lifted from my shoulders. So it was nice to take a little break and slow down and just focus on something that brings you joy. So I will add that to my survival toolkit and use it because we're all going to be hanging out indoors in our house more often. So we're not always going to be able to run out to find something outside that necessarily brings you joy in this new state. So it's nice to know that you don't have to go to extremes to find that happy place. You can do that relatively easy. So thank you so much. I appreciated that, Courtney. And I will do that more often. And thank you, Dr. Outland. Appreciated your wisdom as well. So it's just an excellent evening. I don't know if our guests have questions that they'd like to ask.
If anyone has questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Rafael said in the chat, amazing, needed that, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us probably feel that same way.
Thanks, Rafael.
Give it a minute. Very calming. Thank you so much, Dr. Outland and Courtney. This was very much needed. Yes, and now this is being recorded, so folks can, if you need a refresher, you can go back and do it again. So that's great. Her tone of voice was everything. I thought the same thing. You have a very calming voice.
Yes.
Stacy said, I've been a meditator for 20 years and I know the effects are powerful. Great. And lots of thanks being expressed. Okay, well, if that's all, we will plan to send out a follow-up email to everybody who RSVP'd tonight. I'll include the recording, some additional resources or reading, etc. So you can keep an eye out in your email for that. But if that's all, I just want to thank you, our guests, for joining us again, and for everybody for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedules, for doing a little bit more Zoom. A lot. I've been on Zoom for like 6 hours today, but this was a good way to end it. It was something relaxing. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope we all can take some of this peaceful feeling with us moving forward and keep that sense of connection and community as we move forward. So we will see you soon for our regular Take Action nights again. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Deep breaths. Much love to everybody. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Bye, everyone.